r/AskReddit. What's the craziest reason you had to fire someone? Oh boy. I'd have to go with a guy who in the span of 24 hours started a fist fight with another employee on camera with witnesses, then called the police and said the other guy did it, trying to press charges. I just sent the video. Trespassed on the property the following day and slaughtered my boss on camera with witnesses, then called the police and said my boss did it. I just sent the video. Hurt himself somehow and went to the hospital where he told the doctor he'd been attacked at work. Doc found no injury consistent with his story and well, yeah, camera. The guy just couldn't figure out what video evidence was. Why did he start the fight? I deal with complaints for a bank. Customers always tell a story where they are totally reasonable and staff threaten to attack them. They know calls are recorded, they know the bank has CCTV footage, yet they think if they kick up enough of a stink they will be right. We had someone fall asleep at his desk with a lit cigarette in his hand. In an office full of cubicles like maybe 6 to 7 years ago. And the first time he wasn't even fired. He was fired when it happened again. Had a guy on my team start smoking a cigarette at his desk. He was diabetic, and when confronted it was clear he was low on blood sugar. A soda later, and he was quickly himself. I worked retail, and we had an employee that would hide and take naps inside racks of clothes. Somehow that wasn't the reason we fired her. We fired her for stealing clothes and then wearing them to work. Like you can somewhat understand having a nap. Maybe she thought, hide in plain sight with the clothes? Lady probably mastered the art of sleeping standing up and was going to pretend to be a mannequin. Once I had a guy call in sick to his restaurant/bar shift right before his shift and then proceeded to show up shit-faced drunk for happy hour during the time he was supposed to be working. He was not a bright man. Did he forget he called in sick? Nope. Just flexing. A girl I used to work with did pretty much the same thing. She called out sick on the busiest day of the year and then showed up with a group of her friends. We were already pissed as we cold really used her that day, so none of us were serving her or her friends. She had the audacity to go to our boss and complain that we were ignoring them. He laughed in her face. At some point she tried playing dumb, the whole I don't understand why everyone's mad thing. Finally another bartender told her, yeah, you realize you're fired, right? This girl refused, saying the boss never specifically told her she was fired. So we told our boss she said that. He opens the office door, screams her name, and in front of everyone goes, name. You're fired. Is that clear enough for you? She made a big loud scene along with her friends, and then finally they all got thrown out. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, a few months after that happened, she showed up with her friends again. Super awkward. Dumbus stole a $100 bill out of the register at the end of his first shift alone on register. He didn't know about cash balancing. If someone is dumb enough to steal that much out of a register, I don't think knowledge is enough to stop them. One employee was fired for pretending to ring up his friend. He could have gotten away with it. He scanned everything on price check mode, pretended to swipe his buddy's credit card, and fed a length of blank register tape out, as if a receipt were printed out. No one noticed anything off. Except his buddy never asked him to do it. The cashier took it upon himself to hook him up, and at the end the friend was left thinking, what the duck just happened? He felt so guilty the next day he brought the items back and told the manager what had happened. Years ago, at a lumber company, had a guy, less than 2 hours after he started on his first day, pick up his car with a forklift and stand underneath it to see what was rattling when he drove. Turned out it was his brain. His head wasn't screwed on tight. Not me but my dad. He has a small handyman company with less than a handful of employees. His tools somehow have the habit of growing legs when he's at construction sites, so he rigorously writes his name on everything with permanent marker. One day, shortly after he hired someone new, his folding ruler is missing. He asks around if anyone has seen his folding ruler, but that doesn't seem to be the case. He doesn't think much of it, sometimes things get lost. The next day he sees the new hire with a familiar looking folding ruler. He asks him to see it. New hire refuses. Dad tells him that he's his boss and insists he shows him the ruler. He complies under pressure. Sure enough, there's my dad's name on it in capital and bold letters. Now that could've been an honest mistake and there probably wouldn't have been any repercussions if he simply said, "Oh, my bad. Must have put the wrong one in my pocket. Here's your ruler." But the new hire insisted that this was his ruler and that the name on the side of it wasn't my dad's handwriting, but rather a note the new hire had written on it himself to remember my dad's name. What makes it even more stupid is that my dad's company pays for the tools of his employees. He could've simply asked for a folding ruler and my dad would've given him one for free, but no, he needs to steal the boss's folding ruler and give the stupidest lie imaginable as an excuse. Had to fire a guy for coming to work high on meth and getting lost in a closet while painting it. Asked what the deal was and was told, "I'm having a conversation." That was his last day, LMAO. He got lost in Narnia. Not too crazy. More stupid than crazy. One of the programmers on my team was sitting at his desk looking at 18+ websites. And this is cubicle land. No offices. My director walked into the area to talk to me and saw it. Then it was the first thing he told me about, so I got up and walked over for a look myself, and there it was. Me and the director looked at each, and I said I gotta take care of this. So we walked back 2 hours. I told them what was going on and what we saw, and they told me to fire him. So I did. He lost a $110,000 job for looking at 18+ websites on his computer at work. This is crazy to be. I don't know how old your story is, but in this day and age it boggles my mind that someone would do this. Just do that shit at home, it's not that hard. If you just got to do it, you literally have a screen in your pocket to watch it on in the bathroom. Why would you do it at your desk on your computer? I work at an art studio where we teach classes and sell pottery that our artists make for others to paint. I'm one of the artists and the manager. I started getting a funny feeling about one of my employees. She wasn't doing anything blatantly wrong, just seemed to work really slowly sometimes, request insignificant but kinda odd schedule changes, and have different break habits from the other staff. I started feeling like she was stealing, but this is a really small business, so I didn't have her on camera or any way to really prove it. Until she accidentally sent me a video of herself painting pieces that I made from her home. What an idiot. I'm training a new girl. We are sitting at a computer together. The whole time I'm training her, she's scanning the perimeter around her. She's asking about this guy. Is he single? What about that guy? She's paying very little to no attention to what I'm telling her about, you know, the job. She's not even looking at what I'm doing as I'm demonstrating the work to her. She's rubbernecking every male who walks past. At first I was nice. Okay, did you see what I just did there? Now when this happens, we do that, etc. Her eyes were glazed over, she wasn't absorbing anything, I could tell. Nice wasn't working. After a time, I said to her very sharply, "Are you here to work, or are you here looking for a boyfriend? Because if you're not here to work, I'm going to need to find someone else for this job." I had hiring authority. That snapped her into reality for about 15 minutes. I finally said it's break time. She smiled and said, "I'm going to go up to the 4th floor and see if there's any fresh meat up there." After break time, I sent her into the fax room to collect some faxes I needed. The mail guy was in there changing rolls of fax paper. He came out of the mail room and said, "I think there's something wrong with your new girl." He was very nervous. I said what happened. Apparently she was in the fax room, which tended to get hot because of all the machines in there. She had perched her ass up on the edge of the table, hiked her dress up to where her underwear was showing, arched her back, unbuttoned the front of her dress, and fanned herself with a sheaf of fax pages and said, "Oh, it's just so hot in here." Yeah. Like that. I totally believed him. I believed she did that. 100%. She totally did that. I called her temp agency and said she's not working out. I think this was under 2 hours. I worked at a pet store and was the lead cashier, so I had to train this girl who didn't think she had to abide by the uniform because it's just store name and doesn't count as a real job. That was a warning that despite her thinking she did need to follow the uniform rules. Then when ringing up customers, she actually told customers they couldn't buy certain items because we were running low and she planned on getting a pet soon and wanted these items. I apologized and rung them up. Second warning with me explaining how that's not how it works and she could shop when she's off the clock. Finally my manager fired her when she tried to steal one of the cats that were up for adoption after being told she needed to wait for approval after they do a home visit and make sure she can care for the cat. Her excuse for trying to steal the cat? Her landlord doesn't allow pets, so she wouldn't be approved, and she'd be a much better pet parent than anyone else who wanted the cat and much better than any of the customers we got. The girl didn't even last a week. One of my ER nurses was chasing another down the hall with a scalpel in her hand, screaming at the top of her lungs, "I'm going to cut you, bitch." As a joke, I hope. No, she just snapped. I remember when I hired her, she had glowing recommendations from mutual friends. I honestly think they just wanted to get rid of her. She lost her license a short time later because of substance abuse. It's a shame really, she was great with our patients. When I worked in hotels, I was promoted to front desk manager. My first task was to hire someone. I ended up getting this very charismatic guy that was a little over the top, but overall seemed like a solid employee. After I end up hiring him, and on his first day he asked me if it's okay if he carries his gun on him, and I think that's strange, but it is his right and the owners honestly didn't care, so long as he had his license. He was never able to produce a license, so he was never able to bring this handgun on the property. About a week into his employment we find out that he's been calling guests, specifically the really attractive females, and asking them if they need any overpass service. We were very understaffed and my boss decided that instead of firing him, we were going to take him off the desk and put him on basic groundsman duties. Part of these duties included driving the shuttle to the airport and back, and also filling up the shuttle when it got low on fuel, which means that he had access to the gas card. Our accountant confronts me one day about some very strange charges to the gas card. Apparently we had been filling up the shuttle near daily at anywhere between $20 to $45. We looked into it and got the surveillance footage from the gas station, and it turns out was this kid filling up his friends' cars and even his own car. When confronted, he tells my boss that I said it was okay. Obviously that wasn't true, and they didn't believe him. He ended up also being my first termination. Fired a guy for looking to pay someone to cast black magic on the owner and the owner's family to bewitch them into giving him a raise, and, ironically, never firing him. Only reason I found out was because he asked someone else in the office for help in finding a witch doctor to cast the spells, and word got round. No one wanted to be in the same room as him after that. When I confronted him, he said the devil made him do it, so it wasn't his fault. I live in the Middle East. I definitely did not wake up expecting to fire someone for black magic that day. Side note, practicing black magic is literally a death sentence here. He's gonna post about firing his witch doctor. Plumber. My helper and I went to do a punch list at a new home. When the very attractive 20-something-year-old answered the door, I asked what the problem was, and she said, "When I take a shower, the shower head makes a whistling noise." My helper said, "Hell, if I saw you naked, I'd whistle too." She complained to the super. I had no choice but to fire him. Might not be the craziest, but when I was working in fast food, Subway, I had to fire a guy for assaulting a customer. He had a bad temper. He threw the tuna scoop at a particularly difficult Karen. I had to request the customer to not press charges. Man, I'm not saying it's right, but I can probably understand it. It's also pretty funny. The guy was working multiple jobs. He was very frustrated with life. I felt pretty bad at that time,